Welcome to the second in our series of Q&As on how to build a Dodger. So we continue to get plenty of questions, advice and comments from you guys on how to build a Dodger, and I'm going to go straight in with the first question now, which is...
Okay, go for it.
From SV Pixiefish of Patreon, what will you do for windows? And Awful Harmison SV Illusions, also a Patreon, says, I prefer a hard Dodger with bimini with both canvas and clear sides and screens that can be all rolled up out of the way. And then on YouTube, Brian Starr says, do you intend to have sides on the hard Dodger, either canvas or what have you?
So we've got the hard roof, but we are going to go for soft sides. Now originally we were looking at a hard plastic called strata glass, which we were going to put on the front. It's not quite glass, it's kind of like a mixture of glass and the sort of foldable plastic. Not so sure about that now. Not convinced that the upholsterer is going to be able to deal with it, because I don't think he's ever used it before. So I think we're going to go back to the soft plastic.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the same, we've used clears on our front the last 12 years, and we've been through some really horrendous weather, and it's never been a problem. It's always, it's got through. I'm always worried about something shattering, I don't know.
Yeah, I think and it can crack as well. So I think the key thing is that it's nice and tight.
Yeah.
Tight as a drum, that's the most important thing. But yeah, we're going to have soft sides. We're also going to have kind of fly screens, aren't we?
Yeah.
So a mixture of hard and soft.
Yep, indeed. Okay, so the next one is from Nicholas Lee of YouTube. Will you be putting windows in so you're able to see the sails? If not, don't you then have to go out and check the sails to see them? And along similar lines, the Lithium Crystals, also YouTube, will you be installing a viewing window so you can look up at the mast, or will that not be necessary?
I don't think it will be necessary because we've never had one.
No.
For the last 12 years now we've sailed with the bimini between the helming station and the cockpit. So the thing is, because of the setup, the bimini only comes so far back. So if you're at the helm, you can simply look up. There is nothing pretty much covering you from here backwards.
That actually goes on to the next question, which was from Johnny Hagg. It looks like the helmsman will not be protected by the new hardtop. Is that correct? And if so, why not?
Well, just because of our configuration. If you remember, because we're a ketch, it means that the boom on the main mast can only come so far back, and we have the main sheet coming off the back of that boom. So that cover, whatever it is, whether it's a bimini or a hard Dodger, can only come back to around about here, because if it comes any further back, then the main sheet on the main is going to hit that when you push the boom out.
Yes, we brought it back a couple of inches further, a little bit more cover.
A little bit further back, so we will have a little bit more cover, yes.
Kim, Jamie and Zoe of SY Regulus on Patreon, and he says, have you thought of building a reinforced area on your hard bimini to mount the main boom traveller, thereby extending the cover across the cockpit? That's a really good one.
It's a good question, and we did, yes, look at that as an option. Yes, it is possible to run a track on a hard Dodger, but again, we just don't have the room for it. And I think in order to do that on our configuration, that would have to be super strong. I mean,
it would have to be really strong,
really strengthened.
Yeah. And wouldn't the main just go? It would just be vertical. There would be no angle at all.
There'd be no run on the main sheet, basically, because if you look at the blocks that we've got on the main sheet, we've got triple blocks at each end, and of course, a length in between those two. We just don't have the room. Even just if you were to put the two blocks together, there still wouldn't be enough room. So unfortunately, no, we can't do that.
And believe us, for 12 years we've been trying to come up with a configuration that would work, but we haven't found one yet.
Yep.
Windage next. A couple of people have asked this question. Greg and Kathy Trevarthen of SV Orinoco are patrons of ours, and they say, will high winds at sea or at anchor be a concern for the new Dodger? And then also Craig Iverson on YouTube says, are you worried about increasing the wind area of the boat in high wind situations? Won't it act like a sail? Good question.
I think anything that you put around the cockpit is going to act like some kind of sail, or have some kind of negative effect on the windage. So really I think the trick with this is to make sure that the Dodger roof is just tilted very slightly forwards, and if we go back to our original design we were copying on that light wave catamaran we talked about a couple of weeks ago, if you look very carefully the Dodger is very slightly sloped forwards, and a couple of people have even mentioned that in the YouTube comments as well, to actually make sure that it has that forward slant. Also, don't forget that the angle of the front is going to be pretty sharp as well.
Yeah, it's raked, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's as far back as we can realistically take it. If we were in a situation where the winds were, massive, we would have the option of unzipping, which would stop some of that windage.
Yeah, that's very true.
And unroll the side, even the front, if you had to.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult one. We can't really quantify that until we're actually out there and experience it. But if you look at our current setup, our spray hood at the moment, which looks like an upside down pram and is very ugly, I think would create just as much windage as what we hopefully will end up with. But we just don't know, we'll see.
Going back to water catchment, because we have discussed a little bit about water catchment, we've got a few comments I thought were worth reading out. So Round 51 on YouTube, Chichester tried a system that utilised his mainsail for water catchment. His complaint was that he ended up getting too much salt water from the spray, and a few people have said this. Aussie bloke, now you're putting a rain catcher on, what are you going to deal with salt contamination? Mr. Murby 101 goes one stage further and says, what about bird feces getting in the rain catcher? Yeah, good point, very good point.
I think actually I'd be more concerned with the bird feces than the salt water. The salt water, once you get a downpour, is going to wash away pretty quickly. The bird feces can hang around, and if you've got what Tom calls a snooker table, this is a snooker table, the top of our Dodger with that rain catcher. If the water doesn't escape and you've got bird shit on your roof, that's just going to dilute in the water and end up in your tanks. Horrible. The idea, I think, and this is what most people do with a rain catcher, is to let it rain for a good few minutes.
That's what they've all told us, isn't it?
And just wash it out.
Yeah.
And I think currently my idea is that we're going to have one or two holes with a hose nipple underneath to allow us to clamp a hose on to direct into the tanks. So we won't connect that until we're absolutely positive that the top of the Dodger is clean and is non-contaminated.
Okay, so you open it without it going through the hose and you just let it run, and then when we're happy.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Just a quick word on the Dodger design from Victor Bitter on YouTube. If you're not entirely happy with the lines of the Dodger, and this is probably going back to the first one, he says, if you're not entirely happy with it, why didn't you try to mimic the lines of the soft one it replaced?
If we try to copy that as is, it wouldn't actually work, because the bimini sits, what is it? It's about 30-40 centimetres above the spray hood. So there is this gap. Also, the bimini goes quite far forward over the spray hood, unnecessarily so, in terms at least to protect us from wind and rain. So to just do a straight copy of that, I think it would look odd. But I think ultimately it's going to cover roughly the same surface area, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's going to, yes, I mean, sort of overall, it is sort of following the lines, because you haven't got much choice, really.
No.
Before we go on, just want to go back to what you call it, bimini, Dodger, spray hood, blah, 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 all these different ideas. Well, a couple of our patrons went a bit bonkers. Kevin Berry said, well, why don't you just call it Roger the Dodger? Let's just call it Roger the Dodger. Gogs, I love this one. He said, who cares what you call it? Why not call it a boaty brolly?
I think that's brilliant. We're going to trademark that name, Esper's boaty brolly.
I love it. And then Sean Sim on YouTube, I think it was a joke, he said, why don't you just call it the Bodger Dodger?
It will be a bodge job.
No, it won't. It's going to look beautiful. Okay, so just following on from some of the questions that we were asked non-Dodger related. Coop W, are you for real? You went through all that work and you didn't put in a bar with a dance pole, hence a place to put the wind generator.
We don't need to install a dance pole on the back of the boat because we have a compression post underneath the mizzen, which is at the end of our bed, so that is our dance pole.
LKM asked about a hydro generator. I've not heard anything about a hydro generator. It's a viable alternative. I didn't note the name of the person that replied, but the person that replied underneath that said, yeah, it'll cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, again, they're expensive. I think the jury's still out as to how effective they are, really. You've got to be doing over a certain a number of knots in order for it to start producing electricity. It's not an area that I know too much about. We know one couple that had one, didn't really use it that much. So yeah, if anyone knows anything more, could point us in the direction of further information on the subject, and especially any tests that anyone's done. We'd love to read up on that.
Yves Lemoine on solar panels. He says, for solar, consider multiple MPPT controllers for the panels. Partial shading, as you know, greatly reduces output of the whole array. So, breaking the array into multiple controllers, port and starboard, will help ensure that 100% of power is coming from the unshaded panels, while the shaded panels will drop to as low as 10% output, even with only a small part of one panel shaded.
Yep, completely agree. It just so happens that our friend American, who lives in China, has been bringing us over MPPT controllers for the past couple of years. He first of all brought us over a Pacer, which I believe is actually one of the US's best-selling models. It's a fairly cheap MPPT, but it's very popular and it's made in China. So he brought one over for us originally, which we've been using for a couple of years now. This year he brought over 2 more units. I just wanted a bit of contingency in case one of them went down. And yes, I agree with you. I think what will end up happening is we'll have at least 2 banks of different wattages of solar power. So we're going to need at least 2 controllers for that anyway. So yep, agree with you. Okay, I have a question for Liz. This is from Maximilian. By the way, dear Liz, did I just see you skip the whole line of people waiting at the immigration mobile bunker in episode 107? Ha ha ha.
He wasn't the only one. I think someone else, a couple of other people said that. Yeah, no, I didn't. I would never do such a thing. Never in a million years. No, no, no. There were 2 queues. There was one for the in and one for the out. I can't remember which one it was that we were doing, but we were going to the window where there was nobody. So all those people that we walked past, they were going out and we were going in. I promise you, that's the truth. It really is.
Yes, dear. And finally, a question from Jimbo2696. I've noticed some of your vids seem to be a mirror image and that your tattoos switch sides. Lol. Don't know what you're talking about.
So we hope you found that interesting and perhaps we answered 1 or 2 of your questions. Maybe it's generated more comments and advice from you. If so, put them in the comment section below this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Please like and do share. It really does help us get noticed by other people. So in the meantime,
peace and fair winds.
Welcome to the next Q&A on our Dodger. And what am I going to say? Welcome to the second in our series of follow-ups to the Thank you for watching. I hope you found some of those answers of some use to you.
Do it again.
Alright, what do you want to say?
Say again what you were just saying, but try and say it without chewing your words.
Okay. In the meantime, no, am I saying like, share and what? What?
Say what you want.
No, I don't want to do it all.
No, you do it all.
All of it, okay.
Do
Right,
it.
is he shut up?
Yep, he's shut up.
Pay you today? Yep. Yeah, we'll pay you for, and then tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I come back Monday.
Monday. Yeah. Good. See your family? Yeah. 2 already, Saturday?
Yep.
2 in Saturday? Yeah.